Howdy, y'all. News of the daytime, Thursday. Let's get to it. And of course, we're still trying to figure out exactly when hockey's going to start. August. Could be middle of August. And the funny thing is, I saw one post on Twitter today, and I answered it, which was, well, if they're going to push back next season, it's going to push back the following season too. Yeah. One thing that was discussed about a month ago, it feels like all the days just blur together. One of the things that was discussed a while ago was that the NHL and other pro leagues understand it could be 3 years before we get back on a regular schedule. Where, just due to what we're going through, all the lockdowns and everything else, it could be 3 years before we're back on a regular schedule where you start where you'd normally expect to start the season. In the NHL, that would be in October. So it could just be a gradual clawing it back to where we expect it to start. So summer hockey could be here for a while. Just saying it could be here for a while. Now, with news for today, Steve Yzerman has said he's keeping Jeff Blashill. Now, if you're a Red Wings fan and you're really surprised by this, I'm not that surprised because in this environment and with everything that's going on and with the fact that the Red Wings aren't going to play games again until probably January, they're going to have about 10 months off in between games. I don't know. I don't know if there's a need to bring in a new coach. And who knows what kind of team they'll have after 10 months off. It'll be very interesting to see how some of these rebuilding teams are going to adjust coming through this, and which ones might get really competitive fast, and which ones are just going to remain, mediocre. And I don't think the expectation is for Detroit to get a whole lot better, but who knows? We don't know what's going to happen with the salary cap yet. We don't know where any of the numbers are going to be for next year. No idea. None. It's going to be really interesting, and Steve Yzerman saying, well, I'm not hiring a new coach right now. It's a bad time to be firing anybody and hiring anybody new. And it's one of those things where you'll hear a GM say, I have faith in my coach, I have faith in this guy. And then, of course, once the next season starts, who knows? Maybe a month into the next season, he goes, yeah, this just doesn't work. And then we're right back where we started with Detroit. U.S.-based training camps could be possible for many of the Canadian teams. And Jim Benning's talking about it. Benning is saying, yes, a U.S.-based training camp is possible for the Canucks because of the 14-day quarantine, which is a hot-button topic in Canada and in the hockey world in general. So Jim Benning's just acknowledging what we already know. And nothing about keeping Judd Brackett around, huh? That's too bad. Now, on that same front, the Alberta government is pushing hard for Edmonton to be a hub city and pushing the federal government to help make it happen by finding some kind of a way to waive the 14 days for NHL players. Now, whether that means extra tracking, extra assurances put in place over what a regular citizen would, like, for instance, if I went to the States today and I came back across the border, I have to shelter in place, quarantine for 14 days. And if they're going to say, all right, well, he has to do that as a regular citizen, but NHLers, we're going to let you in. You don't have to worry about the 14-day quarantine. There's going to be a but in there. There's going to be a but. You guys need to do this instead. So the NHL is working with the federal government in Canada as well as the Oilers. So when people are talking about this and saying, well, it's just not going to happen, I don't even know why they're talking about it, because I think it will. You wouldn't have all these people sitting around talking about it if they didn't think there was at least a chance. Could it all fall apart? Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It could all fall apart. And in August, we could talk about, well, they tried. They said, forget it. And so next season starts in January. And the hope is that it would be an 82-game schedule, and that by then we would see some fans in the stands of some, whether it's half, quarter full, whatever it is, to have some fans allowed in attendance. That is the plan. Now, for this summer, no. But by next season, they want to see something. That's part of the reason why you push that back. If you can push it back, you do, and then you worry about everything else from there. And so, yeah, the pressuring of the federal government, we'll see how it works. But at least Canadian officials, when asked, they haven't denied that there's a possibility there could be some sort of a waiver in place. They haven't come right out and said, no, we won't do it. No, we won't discuss it. There's an absolute line in the sand here. John Horgan in BC has said that there is, but really the federal government decides on border closures and things of that nature So I don't think John Horgan can override that. I don't think that you could see the federal government saying we're going to waive a 14-day, and then, for NHLers, if they do these things, and then have Horgan come out and say, yeah, we're not going to respect that and forget it. I can't see it. I can't see it. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Canadian cities aren't being ruled out because, again, in terms of having it in safe cities, Canadian cities have a very low rate outside of Toronto. Toronto, I'm surprised. I'm being honest here. I'm really surprised Toronto's still in the running. But again, Canadian cities are a non-starter unless they work that out. Entry-level contract signing deadline is usually June 1st, which is a few days away. They've kicked that down the road to July 1st. So this is what happens. You kick that down the road. All right, so that entry-level contracts are signed on July 1st. That's your latest date. And they still haven't decided what's going to happen with guys who've signed entry-level contracts during the lockdown. So for Montreal fans, Romanov, we don't know. We don't know yet whether or not the NHL and the NHLPA will say, he should be able to play or he shouldn't. I would think with the 24-team format, with the amount of excitement the NHL wants to generate, maybe. In the beginning when it was signed, I went, he's not going to be able to sign. But with this 24-team format, with the amount of excitement the NHL wants to generate, maybe you allow this kid to go in and play on the blue line for Montreal and just see what he can do. And if you're a Habs fan, that would be an exciting thing because, honestly, their blue line, the amount of 2-on-1s that were being allowed during that one massive losing streak come to mind. If they have a defenseman there that can play at that end a lot better, kudos to them, and it could take a lot of pressure off Carey Price, and who knows, it could be trouble for Pittsburgh. I still think Pittsburgh would win that, but we're over 2 months out from it, so I have no idea who's going to play or who isn't. I have some ideas for who I think probably wins, but no. I'm going to do something along that line, but I'm not doing flat-out predictions. Not yet. Now, Eichel. All right, Buffalo fans. Eichel now apparently is Dwayne. I bring to you Dwayne Eichel. Dwayne Eichel is fed up with losing. He's kind of tired of it. It's getting very frustrating for him. And it's been a tough 5 years for Dwayne Eichel. And as he becomes Dwayne with the rest of us, I understand. And he says he expects to compete for the Stanley Cup every year. So he is very, very frustrated by the way things are going in Buffalo. Now, we talk about this a lot, and I think it's unfair to have the expectation that Eichel or McDavid gets mentioned a lot, not so much this year because McDavid did pretty well with the Oilers. The Oilers did pretty well for McDavid as well. But we are reaching that stage where Eichel's got to be thinking, hey, these are my prime years, and I want to win something. So if we're getting into a region where Eichel might say, I'm out of here, I would think you got one more year. I would think based on this, he's not saying I want out of Buffalo, but he is saying he's fed up with losing. That's kind of what Buffalo does. So that's a problem right there. That means that it's incompatible. It would be sort of like somebody looking at me right now and going, Shannon, you're a nice guy, but the hockey thing doesn't work. Yeah, this doesn't work. And so for Eichel, if he's fed up with losing, maybe it doesn't work with Buffalo. And so, yeah, with Botterill coming back next year, he's got a year to figure this out. Just think about it. A year from now, well, we would still probably be in the regular season a year from now if they push back the regular season to January. So, okay, after next season is finished, we could be looking at Jack Eichel saying, see ya, and Jason Botterill being out of a job. And the Buffalo fans going, oh my God, we're going into another rebuild before we've actually won anything. We're in hell. And then we're all Dwayne again. So we'll see how that turns out. And then the thing with this too is we're already seeing Buffalo fans getting tired and sort of voting with their wallets and not going to the games as much. And if Eichel says I'm out of here and they change GMs again, what does that do to attendance in Buffalo? Do we see the most dedicated fan base in the United States in Buffalo? I would say that considering the amount of abuse they've taken from this franchise over the last 10 years, I will say dedicated fan base with them, absolutely. Will we see that finally split, where fans are like, we've had enough. That's it. We can't do this anymore. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, Daly was asked about the quarantining. So The one question that I hear being asked a lot, and the one comment I see a lot is, if a player on a team gets a positive test, that whole team goes into quarantine. Both teams that played their previous games should go into quarantine. The whole thing gets shut down. He's saying no. Going by medical officials that they've been in contact with, that doesn't necessarily happen. So he's not ruling out that we couldn't see a situation where a positive test means there's a problem, but it doesn't necessarily mean you just throw the whole thing out. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. And again, that's why they're looking for the safest places to have this. This is why, while Canada has the 14-day quarantine, it is still being talked about because, just per capita in Canada, the numbers are far lower. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Now, general managers were told yesterday to plan for a 28-man roster with unlimited goaltenders. So I'm thinking probably carrying 4. I'm going to say carrying 4, 3 or 4. So normally you have a 23-man roster. Now it's 28 and unlimited goaltenders, or just have 28 goaltenders. Just say, you know what, we're just gonna have goalies. We're just gonna do that. Maybe Arizona could have 28 goaltenders and just play the game that way. But yeah, all kidding aside, 28-man roster, and then there'll be the taxi squad as well, as my guess. I don't know how big the taxi squad's going to be, probably 10, 12 players. But again, this is part of the reason why the AHL being shut down is probably for the best for both sides, for both the AHL and for the NHL. Because now you can keep these players isolated, you can keep them with your parent clubs, and keep things as seamless and safe as possible when it comes to potential injuries and players being called up. Basically, the way it's going to work, from what I've been seeing, is that if a player tests positive, then he is put into quarantine, and until he has 2 negative tests, he will stay in that quarantine. So we're in this whole new world. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and hey, Dwayne Eichel is born, I guess. Because seriously, if track down those quotes. Actually, I'll link to the quotes in the description below the video. Because yeah, Jack Eichel, I don't blame him. I really don't. I don't blame him for being fed up. But how long can it go on for? Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.